Thank you, Kurush, for joining the Nielsen CXO series. I wanted to start with the economy in general. We're seeing a big slowdown in the Indian economy. Given this kind of environment, and we also see a lot of volatility, what is ITC doing, and how are they managing during these slowdown period?
ITC has got a variety of businesses, and consequently the business cycles of each of the businesses tend to be different. FMCG tends to be relatively less volatile. Paper tends to be more volatile. Hotels and hospitality tends to be volatile. So consequently, overall in ITC, the level of volatility is much lower because of our mix of businesses, and in some cases counter-cyclic volatility also happening.
When we think of ITC, one thing that really stands out is all the rural initiatives that have happened. There's also a talk of Middle India really beginning to grow. And when we talk about Middle India, it's really the 1 to 10 lakh towns. What is your view on Middle India versus rural India?
In all fairness, we have never looked at India that way. You've got markets. Markets have got different characteristics. Some vary depending upon demography, some vary depending upon population size, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that let's take a city like Mumbai, the differences in Mumbai city are actually far more than, let us say, the differences between so-called rural India and urban India. So to that extent, it's horses for courses. Depending upon the needs of consumers in a particular market, be it urban, rural, mid-town, small town, etc., you've got to provide a basket of services and products which will satisfy both today's and emerging consumer needs.
Kurush, you talked about the emerging consumer needs and the fact that consumer needs are evolving over a period of time.
Always.
So how do you plan to innovate for the future?
I think one of the most important things is to understand what the consumer thinks, what the consumer believes, both in terms of her or his own value systems, but also in terms of expectation management with consumers. We have always believed in investing very, very heavily in consumer understanding. In fact, most people don't know, but we started formal marketing research in India years and years back.
Wow.
And we are still one of the largest spenders and users of formal marketing research in this country. And it is this ability to understand consumers and the ability to be able to see how they evolve and how their needs evolve, which has been one of the reasons why we've been successful.
India is a huge traditional trade environment. Half of world's outlets are in India. In an environment like that, where also modern trade is now beginning to grow, and there's a crossover shopper who's shopping on both sides. How do you plan to engage with this shopper?
We talk about modern trade as though it's a new phenomenon, something which has come in from the West. We tend to forget that India has had modern trade for a very, very long time. The first proponents of modern trade was actually the government of India. Look at Super Bazaar in Delhi, which was the first large departmental store modern trade process in the country. Look at Sakari Bhandar in Bombay. And in fact, it has been the government of India which has really brought in the issue of modern trade into the country. Having said that, one must remember that there are 2 or 3 factors in India which are important. We are a very entrepreneurial people. We are a democracy, and which allows and encourages small industries to flourish. And as a result of that, the number of small retail outlets coming up into the country, I suspect, is only going to grow. Consequently, what I see happening is that so-called traditional retail will continue to grow. Modern trade will, as defined, will continue to grow. And we'll be one of the few economies in the world where I suspect they will coexist peacefully with each other, or maybe not so peacefully with each other, and be very successful.
Let's shift the focus to social media. How do you see social media evolving in India from an ITC perspective?
When we talk about social media, once again, we tend to look at modern digital social media. Ultimately, the basic precepts and principles of information spreading remain the same.
Yes.
Whether it was through telephones in the past, whether it was through gossip sessions amongst friends in the past, or whether it is through more organized and faster reaching tools. Using the net is a matter of scale. ultimately brands and ultimately thoughts are moved by consumers, are moved by individuals. Advertising tries to influence to some extent brand choice, but ultimately it is word of mouth, ultimately it is the spread of word of mouth which is going to make, which has always made the difference.
Kurush, talking about conservation, and I think that is huge for ITC. You've been water positive, you've been carbon positive, and also
And solid waste
waste.
disposal, yes,
So
negative.
is it like really ingrained as part of the company's culture?
Yes, it is ingrained as part of the company's culture. And one of the reasons for it, we've realized that being environmentally conscious, being conscious of the immediate neighborhood in terms of inclusiveness is probably the best business practice you can have. So it is in enlightened self-interest. Recycling, reusing, reducing, which is the sort of mantra and norm of let's say water conservation, for example, is not only good for the environment, it's good for business. Involving the local communities in our processes and involving them into the value chain, once again, is not only good for business, but it's also good for the environment around you in terms of the people working with you. And consequently, it's a win-win situation.
Kurush, last question. It's really about 100 years of phenomenal performance by ITC. How do you see the next decade evolving? I don't think we can talk about the next 100 years, but how about the next 10?
Let's put it this way, ITC is growing, ITC is changing, it has always been evolving and changing, but the rate of evolution, the rate of change over the last 20 or 30 years has been particularly interesting and particularly fast. I believe that this change will continue. I don't know which direction we'll go into. I don't know whether we launch a series of new products or categories, but certainly as we move along the road we've chosen, and it's a very difficult road we've chosen, we are finding that not only is it good for business, it's good for the environment, it's good for inclusiveness, and as long as we continue the triple bottom line approach, I believe that ITC's growth rate will sort of just grow, and there'll be no stopping and no holding backs for ITC.
So we started with a slowdown of economy, and we are ending with huge growth for ITC in the next 10 years. Kurush, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Nice talking to you. Thank you.